AirDrop is.
Oh, but one side.
It does not specify which viewers we're talking about.
I would never put anything on Skype.
We know there's at least one viewer in my office. My empty office is viewing us currently.
Is it business people or like alums? Or both?
Yes.
Custom shows? Added custom shows? Alright, Travis.
Libby, you should be setting up, you should be going right now.
That's what I thought.
Libby, you're
There on
gonna
my computer.
PowerPoint wasn't opening on that.
Download OpenOffice, run in OpenOffice.
You're having problems with that?
No, Mom needs to watch this.
You're not
If you'd like, you can sit on this chair.
You're not funny.
That wasn't funny, but I'm pretty funny. It's too true to be funny.
No, we're really annoying at this point.
Because you're always around when it's saying.
Yes, and it's still really funny.
If you're having problems up with that, you got 99 slides.
Not quite yet, but possibly soon.
It's actually true, I have 99 slides.
He's been saying this over and over again for like 3 days.
slides.
I have 99 pages. Not really, yeah, you're right. Not really.
Oh, I know. I have 99 pages. How do I?
99 PDF pages.
I don't know.
99. Who did this?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not on
No, mine is at 199.
Right? Because you're using the desktop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Whoa. Jiggle the wire.
Which wire?
The wire of the computer that is big.
Right, on the back of the computer.
The VGA on the back.
Oh.
Alright. Okay.
All right, so our next presenter is Libby Glasgow, who will be talking about computer-generated musical harmonies.
Say all that. Yes, this is my SMP. My advisor was Dr. Lindsay Jameson. My project has a very personal sort of background. I'm a computer science and music double major, and while those fields don't often intersect, here they did. This project kind of started out, I was taking a lot of music theory classes, as music majors have to. And at the beginning, what we were learning was the rules of box, stop, browse in a very simplified form. We had these assignments, and they would give us a piece of paper with just the melody written in. We had to write in the other 3 voices, make a harmonization according to a set of rules that unfolded over the course of our time in class. And I hated these assignments. I was personally offended by them. It bothered me that you could make music without an instrument just by following a set of rules. Then I realized, okay, if you have a set of rules, you can define them, and if you can define them, you can program them. So my computer can do my homework. Computers can make music, right? So that was my first question. I did some research, and it turns out, yes, computers definitely can make music. So there are many areas of the field that have yet to be explored. Initially, I intended to use an EEG, so I did some research into music with EEGs. There wasn't actually a whole lot there. There was one group that had created this BCMI piano and interharmonium. They had a very complex system for filtering the brain waves. And the interharmonium was for people to be able to interact with this music across great distances. They could record their brain waves, send it to the person who would come out on the other side, which was all very interesting. Not quite what I wanted to do. There's also many composers who have actually just created compositions based on brainwaves, including David Rosenboom. He's written several papers. One of them was referenced in my paper. It's interesting. I recommend listening to it. Again, it's not the most accessible music. Probably a much more accurate representation than I was really looking for. But it turned out that there were hardware issues with the EEG, so I didn't end up using one at all. So I did some more research into computer-generated music, and there was some interesting stuff there. The automatic style-specific accompaniment was someone's dissertation for their PhD, and basically it had used machine learning. It would take music from rock bands like Green Day. It would analyze the music, and you could put in a melody, and then it would create an accompaniment to go with it. And most of the time it created a very similar or the same accompaniment as the original song. There was also CG Music, which is a really cool tool you can download for free. Basically, you choose different styles and features about the music. You can choose the tempo. It'll create something, and then you can change it. You have options like swinging jazz and boogie woogie, and it'll keep the same harmonic structure but change maybe the rhythms or swing the notes. There was another group that used genetic algorithms, but they were just creating a melody, not harmony. And then I found Choral. Choral is an incredible program that creates incredibly convincing Bach-style chorales. It's hard to tell the difference between what this program writes and what Bach writes. And that really got me thinking. One of the things about choral is that it can take hours to calculate a composition. And while it's really impressive, I realized it wasn't that useful and helped me figure out what I wanted to do, which was to basically create these very simplified versions of Bach chorales as we did with our assignments, and have them work at different levels of correctness. So you would be able to add in or take out features. You could say, all right, I want to have voice overlapping, but I want no parallel fifths, and basically be able to allow or disallow different mistakes depending on whether you wanted something that you could search for mistakes in and find as like a learning exercise, just as in our computer science test, sometimes we have a code snippet with something bad in it, you have to find the mistake. So you could find the mistake in these chorales, or you could generate good chorales so you could have an idea of what works well. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about music theory. This is not cross-listed. I don't know if you already know this, bear with me. Basically, we use the diatonic scale. It has 7 notes in it. We break music down to half steps. Half step is the distance from one note to the very next note. So C to C sharp is a half step, and 2 half steps is a whole step, so C to D would be a whole step. Our scale is made up mostly whole steps with half steps between scale degrees 3 and 4, 7 and 8. And of course, scale degree 1 would be the key that the scale is built on, so a C scale. C is scale degree 1, D is 2, E is 3, and so on. We have intervals in music. An interval is, a distance between notes. So the particularly important ones to know about are the major and minor thirds. So a minor third is 3 half steps, and a major third is 4 half steps. So C to E is major, C to E flat, D sharp is minor. You can put them together so they share a note in the middle, stack them basically, and you make a chord called a triad. C, E, G is a triad, E, G, B is a triad. And basically that's what chorales are. They're mostly just made up of triads. Chords also have functions. I have a nice picture for this photo. Basically, so each chord has a name. So you can go through your scale and build a triad on each different scale degree. You have tonic, supertonic, median, subdominant, dominant, submedian, leading tone. There are also categories of functions. The 3 main categories are tonic, predominant, and dominant. And so basically, chords can function as other chords. Sometimes the submedian or the median can function as a tonic chord, depending on the context. Supertonic and submedian can also be predominant, along with 4 is kind of the predominant chord. Yes. So in 4-part writing, you have ranges for each of the voice based on what's, physically feasible. It's approximately 20 notes, give or take, for each different voice that they can sing. The other thing you have is a lot of rules, a lot of do's and don'ts, mostly don'ts. So some of the main ones, for the do's, you always want to resolve the leading tone, which is scale degree 7. If you have that, you want it to resolve up to the tonic. When you're voicing chords, obviously you have 3 notes in a triad, and you have 4 voices, so you always have to double something. It's best to double the tonic. If you can't double the tonic, you should double the 5th, and don't double the 3rd unless you have to. And whenever you create 7th chords, you should resolve something down. The 7th chord is the triad with another 3rd tacked onto it. Because 7th chords just, introduce a whole other set of problems, I did not include them in my project. There's also, so all of these don'ts, parallel fifths and octaves, basically when you have 2 voices that are a 5th part or octave part, they move the same distance and the same motion. You should never double the leading tone. You don't want to have parallel unisons, which is, again, it's 2 voices on the same note, moving the same distance. Voice crossing is when a lower voice goes higher than the upper voice, or lower than the lower voice. So if the alto is higher than the soprano, lower than the tenor. And voice overlapping is when a note goes higher or lower than the neighboring voice's previous note. So basically, it's like if you looked at the chords next to each other, if you combine them, they would be crossed. So, some of the major challenges for trying to implement a program that could do all these things. The biggest thing, obviously, is getting the computer to think like a composer. There are a lot of things that are easily understood as a person that are much harder for a computer. When a person is composing, you can look ahead and see that, you know, maybe the melody line is slowly moving down, so you want to move your other voices down. Or, you know, if there's going to be a big leap, you can adjust those other voices. You can also just look at the gaps between voices and say, is this awkward? It's harder to measure because it's not precise. You wouldn't have the same exact interval every single time, so it's not a number that you can stick in there, but it's more something that you figure out as you go along. Another big issue was how to choose the chord, because there are conventions, so predominant often comes before dominant. However, sometimes it can go straight to tonic, and that's called plagal motion, or sometimes it can just move to another predominant chord. So you have to figure out how to make sure that you're sort of following conventions, but not creating the same exact thing every time. I was not interested in creating a program that would give you the same harmonization over and over and over. I was interested in creating a program that would do something different with the same melody each time. And finally, the last major challenge was voicing the chord, just deciding, once you have the chord that you're going to use, deciding which voice takes each note. And that one probably has the most room to be explored and improved upon. So what I created was a program called Troublemaker. Two of the most important tools were JFugue, which is a Java library. It has a lot of capabilities I didn't use, but what I did use was it has a player, so you can play back MIDIs, and you can also save your MIDIs. Also, LilyPond. LilyPond creates PDFs of music, so I was able to send the notes that I created in my Java program and then have it laid out on nice sheet music that you could print, duplicate, whatever. In general, for my approach, I used the process of elimination, creating like voice ranges of possible notes, removing notes that didn't fall within the key, removing notes that didn't fall within the chord, removing notes that would cause voice crossing, etc. We stuck with a simplified chorale form, just quarter notes straight through, and there ended up being multiple versions of the program. In the first version, only the tonic, the dominant, and subdominant were used. There was also no visualization. LilyPond had not been implemented at that point in time. For selecting the function, it was just a sort of priority system where if the melody note would allow the chord to be tonic, tonic was chosen. If tonic couldn't be chosen and dominant was an option, it would choose dominant, and finally, if it had to, it would choose predominant. The voicing was random. It would basically just choose a voice and choose a note from the chord and just find it. There was also no lasting record of what had been created. At this point, it didn't save the MIDI file, it didn't create sheet music, so you would run the program and it would play it once and it was done. So that was not great. In version 2, we included all of the different triads, all the different functions within the major scale. That's one thing, don't remember if I said already, but currently the program does not support minor key signatures because it introduces a whole bunch of other problems about when you're supposed to raise the 7th or the 6th because of melodic and harmonic minors. So all of the triads from a major key are incorporated. Also, this was the point where LilyPond was added into the system, so PDFs of the music were being created every time the program was run. The method of choosing the function was switched to the sort of weighted random chance system. Basically, depending on the previous function, it would come up with a random number, and there was some % chance for dominant, predominant, and tonic. And then it would pick one of those categories, and then it would try to find a chord within that category that fit with the melody note. If it couldn't find one that fit, then it would go back and pick another category until it eventually found a chord that would work. There was a function written that completely removed all possibility of voice crossings. Once Lily Pond was added in, it became very obvious that there was a lot of that going on. There was also a method written that reduced voice overlapping, almost got rid of it entirely, but there is one circumstance under which it can still occur between the alto and the soprano voice. The problem with version 2 is that once so many notes were being removed from the options, the voicing sometimes failed. So it was kind of a silly way to run it, but I would run it from the development environment, and then it would print out a string, and I could see from that string whether or not it was actually going to work. And then I'd either terminate the program or complete it. So sometimes it would create good output, but a large percentage of the time it did not. So version 3 fixed that problem. The program now never fails. Added a GUI box that has just a play button. It's a very simple GUI. So you can play back your composition. You can have multiple open at one time, so you can run the program over and over and compare different iterations. It also saves off a MIDI file, so you can come back to it later after you've closed that GUI box. It also added the composer and a title as written in by the user to the PDF that LilyPond comes up with. And there was a change to the way the voicing was done. Basically, I would, from the list of possible options, the soprano note was removed. So it made it more likely that it would find the other voices and have less of an issue. But if the voices cannot be found, it'll just choose a random note within the range of chord tones. So in a rare occurrence, it may voice one note 3 times, and so the chord will not be fully voiced. But the majority of the time, it voices chords fully. So the results, they were pretty good. This is an example. There were things that the program definitely succeeded at and things that it has not yet succeeded at. It falls within enough constraints of the chorales that you can actually look at it as one. It stays in key, always stays in key. All the voices stay within the designated ranges. It stays within the set of chords given to it. And sometimes it does a good job. So there are places like this where the voicing, the spacing is pretty okay, but then there are also places like this where it's bad. Basically, the largest gap should traditionally be between the bass and the tenor voice, which are, bass is the bottom, tenor's the second from the bottom. So that should be the largest gap between voices, or the voices should be spaced fairly evenly. There are also things like these jumps are really bad. Both of those notes are technically within the range, but singing that would be an unpleasant experience. So there's definitely future work to be done. One of the big things that I'd like to change is to add a user-friendly sort of input system. Right now, the output is very user-friendly, and it's very easy to look at what's been created. However, to put in a melody line, it's a completely manual thing, and if the user was not a computer scientist, they probably wouldn't be able to do it, and if they didn't know the system for numbering that I use, they really wouldn't be able to do it. So it would be really good to have a GUI where you could simply say, these are the notes that I want to put, and it would create it on the spot, rather than just pressing the run button on the program. It would also be really great to add more features to continue to develop it. The ultimate goal would be that it could follow you, it maybe would cover all the material of music theory 1 and 2, and all of it would be optional. You could add in different chords, you could add in different types of motion, you could take things out. You could either allow mistakes if you wanted to practice finding them, or you could only allow correct output. So you could see examples of effective chorales. It would also be cool to actually get an EEG and add that into the mix. Use that as an input for the melody and possibly to control other features, influence the function of the voicing. Who knows? These are just my references. And that is all I have. Questions?
So,
Oh, sorry.
so did the music, so it created that music, right? Did it sound okay?
Sorry, I forgot about that part. Yes, I brought my sample to show you this. Hopefully it's loud enough. It's taking a second. So that's what was on the screen. There are different ones. Sorry, does anyone can pass it around and play it? I don't know how much you could hear it. I didn't have those speakers, but
I just walk around.
In your estimation as a music major, does it sound good?
I think it does. It sounds like what it is. It sounds like chords within a key. And a lot of the rules that it isn't actually achieving. Here, sorry, I can listen, pass it. Issues of awkward voicing, those aren't particularly audible. Part of that, I would say, is the medium. I mean, it is a crappy MIDI file, and it's piano, not voices. But bad voicing doesn't necessarily make for bad music from an auditory standpoint. I think it would be more uncomfortable singing anything else. I mean, the really hard thing about this is that some rules are made to be broken, and sometimes what sounds really good is breaking the rules. You learn no parallel fifths, no parallel octaves, and I remember studying in music history a piece, was it Gluck? Do you know what I'm talking about? It was this section about harmonies, and they specifically used parallel fifths and parallel octaves to create this special sound. So the question is, how much error do you actually want to eliminate? But anyway, so yes, the answer is, I think it sounds like music, it sounds like chords.
So I was going to ask about there's kind of a tension in the musical world between the creative act versus just following a formula. And I wanted to know if over the course of this year you had gained any new insights on that, or if you still kind of feel the same when you started.
Well, I think it was helpful to realize that basically it was harder than I thought it would be. Because again, there are all those intricacies that are so easy for us to look at and see that, this voicing is awkward, this is a weird leap, this is strange, and it's so much harder to make the computer understand that, and it would take so much time. I wouldn't say that it's impossible, but I do think that based on what I saw in choral, I would say that it is true that if you will put enough time into it, you could probably make a program that would imitate the style of any composer. You just have to take the time to examine those rules, set them down.
So why, I remember how much you hated these assignments. So why did you want to make a program that would produce these assignments that you hated?
I think I kind of wanted to see if I could do it, and kind of wanted to prove myself wrong. And also, it's just, it started out